had been working the overnight shift at a small 24-hour pharmacy on the eastern edge of Hollow Pines, a mid-sized town in rural Tennessee, for just over 10 months. It sits on a corner lot at the intersection of two roads that both lead out of town in different directions, which means the surrounding area goes completely dead after midnight. No foot traffic, no neighboring businesses still open. It was a Thursday night, just past 2 in the morning, when a black pickup truck turned slowly into the parking lot. I noticed it immediately because I had not seen a single vehicle pass the windows in over 30 minutes. The truck pulled into a space at the far edge of the lot, not near the entrance, not under the lights, but at the outer boundary where the orange glow from the overhead fixtures barely reached. It stopped. The engine kept running. Nobody got out. I watched the truck from behind the counter without making it obvious that I was watching. I assumed the driver was finishing a phone call or checking directions or doing any of the dozen ordinary things people do when they pull into a parking lot late at night. A minute passed, then 5, then 10. The engine stayed on. The truck did not move. After about 15 minutes, the headlights cut off. The engine kept running in the dark. That was when the first thing registered as wrong. Not dramatically wrong, just slightly, quietly off, in the way that certain things are off before you have the language to explain why. Another few minutes passed before the driver's door finally opened. He was tall. That was the first thing I noticed. The kind of height that reads immediately, even at a distance, slightly too large for ordinary spaces. He was wearing a dark gray canvas jacket and dark trousers, and he moved with a deliberateness that had nothing rushed or casual about it. He did not look at the entrance when he got out. He looked at the building, at the windows. He stood beside the truck for a long moment, doing nothing except looking at the store from across the parking lot. Then he came inside. I watched the truck from behind the counter without making it obvious that I was watching. I assumed the driver was finishing a phone call, or checking directions, or doing any of the dozen ordinary things people do when they pull into a parking lot late at night. A minute passed, then 5, then 10. The engine stayed on. The truck did not move. After about 15 minutes, the headlights cut off. The engine kept running in the dark. That was when the first thing registered as wrong. Not dramatically wrong, just slightly, quietly off in the way that certain things are off before you have the language to explain why. Another few minutes passed before the driver's door finally opened. He was tall. That was the first thing I noticed. The kind of height that reads immediately, even at a distance, slightly too large for ordinary spaces. He was wearing a dark gray canvas jacket and dark trousers, and he moved with a deliberateness that had nothing rushed or casual about it. He did not look at the entrance when he got out. He looked at the building, at the windows. He stood beside the truck for a long moment, doing nothing except looking at the store from across the parking lot. Then he came inside. He nodded once, very slowly, as if that was information he was recording rather than receiving. Then his eyes moved across the store behind me and he asked, "You working alone tonight?" I told him my supervisor was in the back doing a stock count. There is no supervisor. There is no back staff on overnight. But I have learned over the years that the answer to that question is never the true answer. He did not buy anything. He did not ask for anything else. He stood at the counter for another moment, looking at me with that flat, empty expression, and then he turned and walked out. He nodded once, very slowly, as if that was information he was recording rather than receiving. Then his eyes moved across the store behind me and he asked, "You working alone tonight?" I told him my supervisor was in the back doing a stock count. There is no supervisor. There is no back staff on overnight. But I have learned over the years that the answer to that question is never the true answer. He did not buy anything. He did not ask for anything else. He stood at the counter for another moment, looking at me with that flat, empty expression, and then he turned and walked out. Not toward the exit. He pulled slowly across the empty lot and parked directly in front of the entrance doors. Centered, deliberate. The way you park when you want someone inside a building to understand that you are positioned directly outside it. Then he cut the engine again. I locked the entrance doors. We are not supposed to lock during overnight hours. Company policy is clear on that, and the reasons are practical. But there is a clause that permits it under specific circumstances involving staff safety, and I decided that 2:50 in the morning, with a man who had asked what time I worked and whether I was alone, and who was now parked 12 feet from the entrance staring at the building, qualified as a specific circumstance. I had barely set the lock when he got out of the truck again. He walked up to the entrance and tried the door. When it did not open, he stepped back and looked through the glass directly at me. He was not angry. He was not surprised. He was calm in a way that was somehow worse than either of those things. The calm of someone who had considered this possibility in advance and had already decided it did not change anything. He tried the handle a second time, slower, more deliberate. Then he leaned to one side, trying to see past the display shelving near the entrance into the rest of the store. I picked up the store phone and held it to my ear and moved my mouth as if I was in the middle of a conversation. He watched me through the glass for a long moment with that flat expression. Then he walked back to the truck and got in. I thought it was over. I stood behind the counter and watched the monitor and told myself he was going to start the engine and pull out, and this would become one of those shifts I retold to coworkers. The weird night with the weird guy who sat in the parking lot for an hour. I talked myself most of the way into believing that. Then his brake lights came on, not to reverse toward the exit. He pulled forward along the front of the building and turned down the side. The narrow access road that runs between the pharmacy and the empty lot next door, leading to the rear of the property where the delivery entrance is. My stomach dropped. The rear entrance is a solid metal door with a standard push bar from the inside, but from the outside it takes a key. The delivery area is not covered well by the parking lot lights. The camera back there covers the dock and the door directly, but there is a section along the far wall near the utility boxes where the angle does not fully reach. I pulled up the rear camera on the monitor and watched. For almost 3 minutes, nothing happened. Just the empty delivery area and the static image of the metal door under the single overhead light. Then he stepped into frame from the side. He walked slowly toward the rear entrance, hands in his jacket pockets, looking at the door with the same flat, deliberate expression he had worn at the front. He tried the handle. It held. He stood there for a moment looking at it. Then he looked directly up at the security camera. He stood there looking into the camera for what felt like a very long time. Then he walked back out of frame toward his truck. I called the non-emergency line and described everything that had happened from the moment the truck pulled in. The dispatcher stayed on with me while a unit was sent out. I kept watching the monitor. After another few minutes, I saw his brake lights come on and the truck pulled back around to the front of the building. He parked again, got out again, stood in front of the entrance again. When the patrol car turned into the lot with its lights on, he was already moving. Back to the truck, inside, engine on, and out of the lot before the officer had fully pulled in. Smooth and unhurried, like someone who had timed exits before. The officer took my statement and reviewed the footage. He was straightforward about the situation. Nothing the man had done technically crossed a line that allowed for more than a report to be filed. He had not broken in. He had not made a verbal threat. He had been a man in a parking lot who tried a locked door. The footage showed all of it clearly, and it showed nothing that constituted a chargeable offense. The officer told me to call immediately if anything further happened. He gave me a direct number. He looked at the footage one more time before he left and did not say anything else, but the way he looked at it told me that he understood what I had described was not nothing. He did not come back the following night, or the night after that. I worked the next 2 weeks in the specific alertness of someone waiting for something they cannot name. Every set of headlights that turned into the lot got my full attention. Every dark vehicle made my hands slow down whatever they were doing. By the end of the second week, I had almost convinced myself that it was finished, that whatever it was had moved on, lost interest, dissolved back into the ordinary world of people who drive past pharmacies at 2 in the morning and keep going. 17 days after the first night, I was in the middle of a quiet shift just past 1 in the morning, when I felt the particular attention you feel when something has changed in your peripheral vision. I looked up at the window. A black pickup truck was passing slowly on the road outside, not turning in, not stopping, just moving past at a pace that was slightly, almost imperceptibly, below the speed of someone simply passing through. As it moved under the streetlight at the corner, I had a clear view of the cab for exactly 2 seconds. He was not looking at the road. He was not looking at the intersection. He was looking directly at the store windows as he passed, the same flat, expressionless way he had looked at me through the glass that first night. And then the truck was past the light and continuing down the road and gone. I filed an updated report the next morning. I described the vehicle, the time, the direction. The officer I spoke to noted it and told me to keep documenting. I have not seen the truck again since that night, but I want to be precise about what that means and what it does not mean. It means he has not come back. It does not mean he is gone. It does not mean that the 17 days between the first night and the drive-by were the longest gap there will ever be. It does not mean that the next gap will not be longer, designed to make me feel exactly the way I felt at the end of that second week, like it was finished, like I could relax, like whatever it was had moved on. I know the layout of this parking lot the way I know my own home now. I know exactly which angle the rear camera does not cover. I know where the blind spots are along the side wall, and how long it takes to walk from the delivery entrance to the utility boxes and back. I know all of that because he made me learn it. I still work the overnight shift. People ask me why, and I do not always have a clean answer. Part of it is that changing your entire life around one person feels like a kind of defeat that I am not willing to accept. Part of it is more practical than that, but I will tell you what has changed permanently. I lock the entrance door at 2 in the morning now, regardless of policy. I check the rear camera every 20 minutes on a timer. I keep the non-emergency number dialed into my phone so it takes 1 tap to connect. And every time a vehicle pulls into that lot late at night and sits without anyone getting out, I do not wait to see what happens next. I have already learned what happens next. What stays with me most is not the night it happened. It is the drive-by 17 days later. He did not stop. He did not turn in. He just drove past slowly enough to see me through the window and kept going. Like he was checking that I was still there. Like he already knew he had all the time in the world. A few years ago, I went to my husband Callum's family reunion. The kind that happens once every few years at somebody's aunt's property. Folding tables on the back lawn, kids running between the legs of adults, conversations overlapping across paper plates. At some point in the afternoon, a group of Callum's cousins ended up together on the porch. There were 5 of them, all around the same age, all male except one. And they had fallen into that particular mode of storytelling where people try to outdo each other with memories of childhood misbehavior. Broken windows, stolen desserts, lies told to grandparents with complete confidence. I was sitting nearby, half listening, when Callum's cousin Renata went quiet for a moment, and then asked, almost casually, "Do you all remember the little man in the basement?" Every single face at that table changed. Not gradually, all at once, like someone had cut the sound in the middle of a crowded room. 4 grown men who had been laughing 30 seconds earlier went completely still and pale, and not one of them said a word for a long moment. The kind of silence that has weight to it. That reaction frightened me more than anything that came after. Nobody wanted to discuss it. The subject got nudged aside and the afternoon moved on. But I could see it sitting on all of them for the rest of the day. something unspoken pressed just behind their expressions. On the drive home, I asked Callum about it. He told me that when he and his cousins were young, somewhere between 8 and 10 years old, they had been playing in his grandparents' basement without permission. The basement was the kind of place old houses have. Low ceiling, shelving units along the walls stacked with preserved jars and forgotten boxes. The particular smell of concrete and old wood and things stored too long in the dark. They were being loud, causing the minor chaos that groups of unsupervised children reliably cause. His cousin Derek had knocked a jar of preserved peaches off a shelf, and it had shattered on the floor. And instead of being worried about it, they were laughing and inventing increasingly elaborate explanations for how it had happened on its own. That was when they heard the sound. Callum described it as a dry shuffling, the sound of something moving slowly behind the shelving unit along the far wall. They all stopped and looked at the same moment. He was standing behind the shelf, small enough that only the upper portion of him was visible above the lowest board, but visible clearly, the way something is visible when it wants to be seen. About 2 feet tall. He looked, Callum said, like a very old man compressed into a very small body, deeply wrinkled, with an expression that carried a weight of displeasure that seemed older than the basement, older than the house, older than anything a child should encounter on an ordinary afternoon. His clothes were worn and grubby in the way of something that had been wearing the same thing for longer than clothes are meant to be worn. He looked at them, and then he spoke. His voice was low and unhurried. He said something along the lines of, "You children had better behave yourselves, or your lives will be very hard." Then he was simply not there anymore. What unsettled me most when Callum told me this was not the story itself, it was his tone. He was not frightened telling it. He was not even particularly animated. He recounted it the way you recount something that happened and was filed away and accepted as a thing that occurred. The matter-of-fact calm of someone who had made a kind of peace with an experience they could not categorize. That calm was the strangest part of the whole thing. Later that evening, I managed to gather 3 of the cousins together and gently pushed the subject back open. They resisted at first, the same discomfort from the afternoon, but eventually they gave in and started talking, and what struck me immediately was how consistent their memories were. Not in the vague, overlapping way of shared childhood memories that get smoothed together over time, in specific ways. The jar of peaches, the sound before they saw him, the shelf, the height, the clothes, the face. They each added details independently that the others confirmed without hesitation, not building on each other's descriptions but corroborating them, the way witnesses corroborate rather than collaborate. They had none of them ever told anyone. Each of them had privately decided, in the way children process the inexplicable, that it had been a dream or a shared hallucination, or something the mind produces when startled. Each of them had carried it alone for years and assumed the others had forgotten or dismissed it entirely. None of them had forgotten it. Callum's cousin Marcus was the one who ended the conversation. He had gone quiet toward the end, and when there was a pause, he said simply that he did not want to talk about it anymore, that he had never wanted to talk about it, that something about revisiting it made him feel the way he had felt standing in that basement as a child. Not exactly frightened, but aware, in a way he could not fully explain, that something had seen him clearly and had found him wanting. He changed the subject and nobody pushed back. I have thought about that afternoon many times since, about 5 people carrying the same specific memory independently for the better part of 2 decades, about the way their faces changed when Renata said the words, about what it means that the little man's warning was not a threat exactly, just a statement of fact, delivered quietly from behind a shelf in a basement to a group of children who had no frame for it and no language for it and no choice but to carry it forward into their adult lives without ever quite being able to set it down. You children had better behave yourselves, or your lives will be very hard. Stay safe, guys.